Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Bills Guys vidcast presented by the Buffalo Fanatics. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at Judge Mathis, and I am joined today and every day, really. I don't know why I keep saying that, but by my co-host, Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at Tilt Money. Together, we are the Bills Guys, and you can find us on Twitter at the Bills Guys as well. We've got a chock full show tonight. We're going to be talking about maybe some players that are flying under the radar on the defensive side of the football that we think could have, big seasons. We want to talk about the Buffalo Bills, Florida OTAs that are being led by Josh Allen, and we want to do something special today. We want to do a little bit of a drought era draft. So all of those things plus the fan Q&A we have on tap for you this evening. Before we start, I think it's important that we do acknowledge what's going on in the world right now. We have chosen not to use this platform to provide any commentary, not because we don't have thoughts or opinions, but just because we feel like this platform is just something we don't feel comfortable doing it. I know I personally don't feel comfortable telling other people how to think and feel, and maybe you feel the same way. But if you guys ever want to have conversations with us, on Twitter, I do have thoughts and opinions, and you're more than welcome to scroll over to my Twitter page and have a conversation with me. I'm a teacher. I tell my students all the time, the more perspectives that you hear from, the more people that you talk to, the more educated you'll be, and the more, the more you'll be able to empathize and really understand where people are coming from. So maybe we should all stop sharing opinions for a little bit and start listening, to people, not politicians, but our fellow man. But that's about the only advice I'll give you guys today on that topic. We are strictly going to be a Buffalo Bills vidcast here on the Bills Guys today. So we're going to start today with a little bit of a countdown. 75 days away from Buffalo Bills football. Feels like a light year away, but we are 75 days away from Buffalo Bills football.
75, that's kind of like another milestone, man. We got the quarter century mark. I think, and we're going to talk about one of the topics today, is these videos that are coming out of Josh and the gang, man. It's getting me pretty hyped up. I'm not going to lie, I was getting into into a little bit of a lull. Was like looking at some other things. Pierre and I have been talking about like the dynasty owner leagues and things like that. So it was really cool to see that. And 75 days can't come soon enough. And let's hope that there are no setbacks or issues with the kind of reopenings and things like that going on with COVID. Because, that's kind of taken the back seat on obviously the last few days. So let's hope that all that stuff kind of works itself out and we're on track for the season to start as planned.
Yeah, I mean, for most of the things we're hearing, it looks like the NBA is going to be back soon. It looks like the NHL is going to be back soon. Major League Baseball, nothing to do really with, safety concerns. It's mostly a money thing. Who knows if baseball will get its act together. But most pro sports are returning, so definitely looking forward to being able to see our Buffalo Bills in September, August, September. Hopefully we'll get to see them. I've never been itching. I'm usually itching for preseason football. I've never been itching more than I have this offseason. But this drought draft that I've been preparing for has been a welcome distraction. So let's shout out our super chatters real quick. We got our bottom scroll here. We got our super chatters from last week. We have some super chatters from weeks previous. We really appreciate you guys. As if you're watching on YouTube and you appreciate, what we have to say, we always appreciate our super chatters. If you have a comment, a question, if you are a super chatter, you are priority number one, and you ensure that your thoughts and your questions are heard and discussed. So we appreciate the super chatters. All the money goes right back into Buffalo Fanatics, paying for fancy things like these backdrops and these graphics and things of that nature. So we really do appreciate our super chatters. We will be doing monthly giveaways. So if you do feel generous this evening, we do appreciate our super chatters. And I do want to emphasize this show is all about viewer engagement. So, hit that like button, comment in the comment section. This show is all about you guys, the fans. So obviously we have takes and opinions that we want to share. But at the same time, we want to hear what you guys have to say. And we want to get multiple perspectives flowing and get this conversation going. So let's lead off today, Dave, with our topic number one. And this one's a little exciting to me. It came to me the other day. And that is defensive X factors. And I want us to think about, and I want the people in the chat section to think about, who's a player that maybe we're not talking about Not, Tremaine Edmonds, not Trey White, not Micah Hyde, not Jordan Poyer. Who's maybe a guy that we're not talking about that could end up being like a Pro Bowler this year, or an X Factor player who does something on the stat sheet that really sticks out?
Yeah. I mean, this is a great question. And I think like there are guys that we have talked about that I'm going to kind of pass over for this specific conversation. We've talked a lot about Josh Norman in the past as him coming in for 1 year, but I'm not going that route. I'm not going with anyone in the secondary. I'm not going with anybody in the linebacking core. I'm actually going to go with kind of like a 1A and a 1B, but they play the same position. And the reason I'm going this route is because of sort of what was left behind by the player that departed in this role. And that player that departed was Jordan Phillips. So the guys that I'm looking for that could potentially be stat sheet stuffers from an inside pass rush perspective are, one, Vernon Butler is a guy that I don't think we're talking about enough. Former first round pick from the Panthers. He's almost identical in physical stature to Jordan Phillips. He's 330, right? He's got obviously the pedigree coming out as a first rounder. Started to kind of maybe get his footing a little bit last year in Carolina, and I think is going to be looking to prove that he's got something to offer, sort of like a Jordan Phillips did with us last year as he kind of paved his way to leading the team in sacks. Juan says Harrison Phillips, he's my 1B. That's a great comment, Juan. The reason I'm putting him as 1B is just because we're not sure exactly what we're going to get from Horrible Harry as he's coming off the injury. I hope that he comes back better than ever, and maybe Vernon Butler and him will have a nice little competition there for that one technique spot in the rotation. But I think right now I'll give the edge to Vernon Butler, see what he can do given that pedigree. And yeah, I'm thinking from that spot, I mean, look, we saw that position produce close to double-digit sacks last year. So who knows? Maybe that's another, that's another year where maybe we see that 6 to 8 sack range coming out of that one technique spot. So let's see what we can get there.
Yeah, Tom Winter chimed in. Whoever can get some sacks, Ed Oliver. I'll tell you what, my thought process going into this was sacks as well, but I'm not going with Ed Oliver. I think that our defense is going to see a philosophical shift this year with the loss of Lorenzo Alexander. I mean, Lorenzo Alexander was an absolute unicorn. He could drop back into coverage. He could set the edge. He could rush the passer. He could play special teams. I mean, the man could do just about anything on the football field on the defensive side of the field that you asked him to do. And, he's a missing component of that defense, and he's not going to be replaced by any one singular player. You're going to see AJ Klein replace him sort of on the rundowns and on the goal line. You are going to see, maybe Saran Neal step in and take some big nickel, snaps. You're going to see Teron Johnson maybe on the field more as a nickel as well. Maybe see Dane Jackson, EJ Gaines. What mind you? I think you're going to see more guys in the secondary. But Lorenzo Alexander made an interesting comment on, I believe it was Matthew Perino's podcast when they were interviewing him. It could have been the West Her interview. I apologize. He did a whole bunch of interviews that week. And he stated that he thinks that Mario Addison is going to do a really good job filling his role. And that's my player that I'm going with, and it's Mario Addison. Not because I think he's going to step in and be our strong side linebacker. I don't think that. Like I said, I think there's going to be a philosophical shift in the defense. I think Mario Addison is going to come off the bench. A $13 million player is going to come off the bench, and that's why I sort of have him under the radar a little bit. I think people are sleeping on him. This guy has had 9.5, 9, 11, and 9.5 sacks the last 4 years. Practically a double-digit sack guy for the past half decade. And no one really talked about him in free agency this year, probably because he's older, probably because he's not the flashiest athlete in the world. But I'll tell you what, I see some of his offseason videos. He's looking good, and I think the Buffalo Bills are going to use him in a role where you haven't seen the Bills use a player in this role. Like, I think you're going to see him taking, blitzing from the middle. I think you're going to see him backing up Jerry Hughes and coming in and playing right end. I think you're going to see him playing left end. I think you'll see him rushing with his hand up, coming, playing from that 3-4. He's proven he's literally going to be on the field in 5, 6, 7 spots. He's going to come on and off the field and play multiple positions and rush the passer from multiple positions. So I think that's what's going to be really interesting about Vosean Joseph. I think, not Vosean Joseph. I just saw Vosean Joseph in the comment section. I think that's what's really interesting about Mario Addison. And I wouldn't be surprised if not only does Mario Addison continue on his trend of getting, 9.5, 10 sacks, I wouldn't be surprised if he pushes 15, 16 sacks this year. The way our secondary can really wreak havoc on the quarterback with Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer causing headaches and Trey White. And, with the rest of our defensive line getting sort of a makeover and being better at setting the edge, I think Mario Addison could be primed for a 15, 16 sack year.
But can a guy that's making $13 million a year really be under the radar? I don't know. I
think from a national perspective, he is, and that's where I'm going with here.
I agree with you. From free agency, he was under the radar. I agree with you there. But I think now that the money he's getting, he's not so under the radar. He's going to be on my radar. I'll tell you that.
But I even feel like most of the interactions we have with fans and things like that, I still feel like we're not. I feel like we're not. What's the word I'm looking for? I feel like we're just not hearing his name as much as we're hearing Ed Oliver, as much as we're hearing. Someone said, "Does Matt Milano count?" I'm not counting Matt Milano. Like, I love Matt Milano. I'm not counting Matt Milano because I think most Bills fans know and appreciate Matt Milano. Maybe this is the year that Matt Milano jumps onto the national stage, but I wouldn't go with Matt Milano here. Voshon Joseph was the interesting comment earlier. It'll be interesting to see what kind of. It's going to be really interesting for me. Camp is. You're right with training camp. It's going to be really interesting to see what the Bills have in mind for Voshon Joseph. Is he going to be strictly Matt Milano's backup, sort of like hedging your bets, making sure he becomes the best weak side linebacker he can be in case Matt Milano walks in free agency? Are they going to try to maybe make him sort of a big-ish nickel and have two weak side linebackers and move Voshon Joseph around or move Matt Milano around? It'll be interesting to see based on the shortened offseason, the shortened OTAs, how they utilize Voshon Joseph. But I definitely think he has the athletic traits, and he's shown in college to be a guy who could drop back into zone coverage and to rush the passer, a guy who's capable of doing that. It'll just be really interesting to see if that's how the coaches choose to, deploy him. And I want to thank Juan Castillo. He just became a new member of the Buffalo Fanatics. I believe that means he joined the premium. So he said, I had to update my card, guys. Longtime member, go Bills. We appreciate it, Juan. Thank you for sticking with us and watching this show. So where were some other names that we saw here in the comment section? I saw a couple other names. Somebody said Daryl Johnson. What are your thoughts on Daryl? Is there even a roster spot for Daryl Johnson?
This is the problem, I think, with Daryl Johnson. Like, you're facing an uphill battle to make this team again. And given that he's practice squad eligible, we know he made the team last year, right? I mean, he kind of was against the odds last year to make the team as a late rounder, and he made the team. I unfortunately think that his odds are even longer or worse this year, given the depth now that we have between Addison, Epenesa, Hughes, Murphy, right? Like Quentin Jefferson potentially playing on the edge. So Daryl Johnson has an uphill climb to make the roster. I envision him being practice squad, but I think he will have a good camp. I think he's going to make the coaches think a little bit, but he'll probably end up on the practice squad would be my guess.
And here's a name that I think would I've been hearing a lot about this, and I think it's because I think Sean McDermott has put this idea in a lot of people's heads. Will Vath comments with Josh Norman reunited with McDermott. McDermott made those really interesting comments on Good Morning Football. Sean McDermott is not the kind of guy to make excuses for people. Like he holds people accountable. But when he was on Good Morning Football, it was kind of like he was making excuses for Josh Norman. And we know the caliber of football player that Josh Norman was when he played under Sean McDermott and he played under Eric Washington in Carolina. So we know what he's capable of. But Sean McDermott was like, hey, he went to Washington. They weren't using him right. He's going to have a chip on his shoulder. So it was sort of like Sean McDermott kind of pumping up and being the hype man for Josh Norman, which is not usually a role you see with Sean McDermott. Usually Sean McDermott's like, well, we have a good youngster named Levi Wallace. We re-signed another veteran who had success with us in EJ Gaines. Josh's going to have to come in here. He's going to have to earn it. That wasn't what Sean McDermott said.
No.
Maybe, his kids are around. He's feeling a little bit more jovial, sit in his basement, a little more comfortable, letting loose a little bit. Or maybe, he did that with a reason because, he really does feel confident that he can sort of, bring Josh Norman back to what he was, or at least a better form of what he was in Washington, closer to what he was in Carolina. Our man Steven commented, EJ Gaines, if he can stay healthy, I could see him contributing again. I could too, But the same misgiving, or the same reason I'm sort of championing Josh Norman here, is the same reason I sort of am a little low on EJ Gaines, because in that same interview on Good Morning Football, Sean McDermott said, like, listen, EJ called us. Like, he said, hey, I'm healthy. Can you guys give me a shot? So it wasn't like the Bills were like, hey, calling EJ all the time, like, hey, how you doing? You healthy? You healthy? You healthy? Like, It was sort of like, it's Sean McDermott sort of made it sound like it was an added bonus. Like, oh, he called us. He wants a shot. It's better than nothing. Like, so maybe EJ Gaines can get into training camp, work his tail off, stay healthy, prove the coaching staff wrong. But I think in the coaching staff's mind, he's 1C or he's number 3. Like, if the coaching staff had to power rank him, I don't think he'd be as high as Norman or Wallace.
I don't think so either. And if you think about the timing when they signed Gaines, it was kind of right, if I recall, like kind of during the height of when all this the COVID stuff was kind of reaching a peak. And we were really unsure when the next time the team was going to be together, when they were going to be able to practice together. So it's a low risk move for the Bills to bring back EJ Gaines, a guy that has familiarity with their system. They're not going to be paying him a ton. He could probably be cut in camp if need be. So like the Bills are probably just like, de-risking themselves in that group. Getting back to Norman quickly, I do think that he is being treated a little differently. I mean, we did get the $6 million contract, and I don't know, maybe you saw him get that pick 6 in the Madden Sim game, and it got your juices flowing a little bit. So maybe that's what it was.
Davion Price asks, do you guys think the rookie corner we drafted will make the team?
Dane Jackson, yeah.
It honestly seems like it's EJ Gaines versus Dane Jackson at this point.
I think so too.
If you think about it, you look at this defense, and one of the things is Levi Wallace is boundary only. He's too frail. He's not aggressive enough to play on the inside. Josh Norman, again, athletic limitations. He's outside only. Trey White is obviously going to be a boundary corner only. Hyde and Poyer are your safeties. Teron Johnson is really nickel only. Then you look at every other player on the roster, and there's a lot of versatility. Jaquan Johnson can play free safety, strong safety. Dean Marlowe can play free safety. He can also play nickel. Saran Neal can play nickel. He can play safety. Dane Jackson, while maybe he has the same like stiffness that like a Levi Wallace and a Josh Norman does, like a hip stiffness where he struggles with guys, with long speed down the field. He's a lot more of an aggressive tackler, and he does have a little bit more size to him. I believe about 6 foot 195. So he's a guy who they made it clear he can play inside and outside. So I think that goes in Dane Jackson's favor, is he's a guy who can play inside outside. I think EJ Gaines can play inside outside as well. But I think I truly think unless EJ Gaines really steps up his game and blows people away, and we look to trade a Levi Wallace for maybe like a mid to late draft pick, I don't see I see it being Dane Jackson versus EJ Gaines for that depth role, and I think the youth would favor a Dane Jackson.
Yeah, I think so too, and especially given that we do have Norman now in the group, you're kind of one up now with the boundary corners, right? Like you're not missing that extra boundary corner that maybe you were missing last year. Although we did end up getting good play out of Kevin Johnson, but now between Wallace, White, and Norman, you have 3 pretty solid guys, and Jackson coming into the mix. Look, EJ Gaines has a lot of things going for him, right? He knows the system. He's been a talented player when he's been on the field. He can play inside and out, but health's always the concern with him. So if he doesn't blow them away in camp, they're not paying him anything where it's going to be a risk for them to cut him, and they'll probably go with the guy they drafted.
I really like this comment from Sharif here. He said, will Epenesa have a significant impact this year? I foresee a quiet start, but more important in the second half of the year, especially when teams have to run more as the weather changes. I really like this comment because Sean McDermott came out and he made the comment like, this is a different year. There's no OTAs. There's going to be shortened training camps, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think the Bills were expecting to draft a defensive lineman that early. I think that they did so because of the value of A.J. Epenesa. I think Quentin Jefferson is the guy that they really foresee in the role that A.J. Epenesa is probably going to end up playing, as sort of a left end 3 technique tweener. But that being said, the comment about the second half of the year is what really starts getting the wheels turning in my brain there, Sharif. And that's because I think back to, because McDermott said, like, oh, it's going to be tough to get him, the reps he needs, all these things. Like, I want him to be a backup this year. He's saying all the right things. That makes me think back to a couple of years ago when we had a guy named Ramon Humber at weak side linebacker and a 5th-round pick named Matt Milano, who it seemed like every Bills fan wanted to give this guy a shot, but the Bills were like, all right, no, week 5, no, week 6, no, week 7. No. It took them quite a long time to work Matt Milano into the roster, but they eventually did it. And the same can be said for Levi Wallace. This is the guy who was on the practice squad. He was on the practice squad. We were watching Phillip Gaines just get pummeled week after week after week. It took 8, 9, 10 weeks for the Buffalo Bills to feel comfortable throwing Levi Wallace out on the football field. So I think that's something you could really see here is Sean McDermott might be saying the right things. He's going to be a backup this year, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if AJ Epenesa is, they took him for a reason, even though they didn't need him, it's because he's a really good player. So I think by week 8 or week 9, his talent might just be too much for the Buffalo Bills to keep him on the bench, and that's when you might see him make a big impact.
Yeah, and I mean, let's be realistic here. Is a guy that a lot of people thought could go in the first round. Big difference here between where you drafted Matt Milano and where you drafted AJ Epenesa. So there's going to be probably a little bit more urgency given where you drafted him to get him on the field a little bit sooner than maybe you felt like you needed to with Matt Milano, although we did see those flashes from Milano and we wanted him on the field. If we struggle a little bit in that edge run defense at all early in the season, there's going to be clamoring to get Epenesa in the lineup more so, because we know that's kind of what we think he can be, like Quentin Jefferson type, a better version of a Shaq Lawson, right? And give you the pass rush as well. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, it should be interesting. All right, let's scroll into our next topic here. The Buffalo Bills Florida OTAs, as I like to call them. So Josh sort of rallied the troops, and this was really exciting to see. Before we do that, our man here, Verminex. Any news about Oliver? Nothing new. I think at this point it's safe to assume at some point, whether it be in the 2020 or the 2021 season, he's probably going to get somewhere between 2 and 4 games. There is a possibility with all the new changes in the CBAs that maybe he slides through the cracks and there is no punishment. But I think that chance is very slim. So you're not going to hear anything until he sort of meets with league office and this whole COVID thing starts to die down and things start to get back to semi-normal. You're not probably going to see anything until the legal process starts to play out. But remember, Goodell's not judge and jury anymore. It's going to be an independent, I believe a former player who's going to be making these decisions. So it's really interesting with the CBA, but it's really not something we can really provide commentary on until we actually see it in action because it's a brand new CBA. So my guess is somewhere between 2 and 4 weeks. It could happen anytime in the 2020 or 21 season, but nothing new on the Ed Oliver front. Which brings us to the next thing, which is super exciting to see. Our boy Joe Kroom, the photographer, was down there in Florida.
Fantastic.
He did a great Instagram. He did a great Instagram chat with Rico the other day down there in Florida. I mean, those photos are just so crisp. Like I absolutely love those photographs down there in Florida. I loved the moment where Josh Allen met Stefon Diggs for the first time. And then we sort of saw that video on the Fanatics page. They found those 2 little kids running up and hugging each other.
That was great.
Comparing it to Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs. But I'm super excited.
Is that what we're going to look like when we meet each other for the first time?
Or we meet each other on the golf course. I
think so.
But it should what are your thoughts on the Florida OTAs and everything that went down? The Bills sort of Bills.
Look, I mean, the plays, whatever, right? Like you're in shorts, you're going against air. So to me, it's like what was more important to me about the whole thing was kind of like the camaraderie and the leadership that you're seeing from Josh Allen here, right? I think, anytime you get guys out there and they're just kind of running routes, they're going to look good. They're going to look good in slow motion. Everyone's going to look good catching the ball. But I was really happy to see the group get together. And it wasn't like it was just Josh and Diggs, right? It was a whole group. It was like the entire offensive skill position players, right? And that to me is the thing that stood out. Like this group being led by Josh Allen, looking like a family, looking like they want to be together, like they're in it for one solid goal, one mission, and that's to win games and get us to where we want to go this year. And one of the most important pieces to that puzzle is Stefon Diggs and him getting in there with that group and kind of getting into those, the situations where he's going to get a chance to come in and chat with the guys, talk, get to know each other, right? Like that's where this team building is so important. The chemistry amongst the guys in the locker room is so important. So the earlier that takes place, especially with a new face and a talented face in the room, this isn't some like young rookie or some, old veteran or some washed up guy coming in and just kind of tagging along. This is going to be the guy that we're expecting huge things out of. So I like that aspect of it, the group and the leadership from Allen. That's important right now. And like, as we get into the middle of the summer, I think.
Yeah, we want to make sure we thank the boss man, Pierre, here. Allen meeting Diggs for the first time was pure gold. Totally agree with you, Pierre. And one of my favorite things about the chat between Rico and Joe on Instagram is how Joe just talked about the level of sort of work ethic and professionalism about Stefon Diggs, because I think that was one of the major talking points when we first signed Stefon Diggs. People were like, oh, he's a diva, this, that, like all these things. But it's not like he's out like, getting drunk and hitting people with his cars or committing crimes. Like that's not the sort of, diva that Stefon Diggs is. He's a football player. Like through and through, this guy lives and breathes football. He wants the ball in his hands because he knows he's the best player on the field. He wants the ball in his hands because he feels like he's going to help the football team win with the ball in his hands, because he's going to make those plays necessary to put your team over the top. And a lot of his emotion and a lot of his antics and all of these things come from the fact that he is just hardwired as a football player. So see him out there just running routes and the crispness of his routes and the work ethic and the way he trains in the gym. Say what you want about the personality, say what you want, but having that kind of role model in terms of work ethic, in terms of professionalism on the football field in your locker room is going to go a long way, because you have two rookies right now, Gabe Davis, Isaiah Hodgins. You have some young receivers in Duke Williams and Robert Foster and Ray McCloud. You have a lot of young guys on that team. And, they made comments last year about how important John Brown and Cole Beasley were to adding professionalism and adding like sort of adults in the room to show people the way in that locker room. Now you're adding, John Brown and Cole Beasley times 1,000. And he's also like probably, like, no offense to John Brown or Cole Beasley, he's a way better athlete in my opinion. So it's really important for those young guys to just see this guy live and breathe football, to see this guy attack every single workout, whether it be in June or whether it be in September, with the same amount of veracity. So I think that's the thing that stuck out to me the most. Was I've heard the stories, now I see it. Like now I see how much Stefon Diggs works.
And I'm going to be honest with you, man. I want a receiver that wants the ball when the game's on the line. I don't want a guy that's going to shy away from the moment, and he's not going to shy away from the moment. He's been involved in one of the biggest moments in playoff football in the last 5 years with the Minnesota Miracle. Now that was kind of a fluky play, but like, let's be real. Like, you want a guy that wants the ball when the game's on the line. People said the same things about Ocho Cinco, right? And that's why it kind of reminds me a little bit about Chad Johnson. Like Chad Johnson, he had some antics or whatever, but like when that guy was on the football field, he was all about football. No one ever questioned Chad Johnson's work ethic or desire to play football. And he's not quite to that level of antics, but he's kind of in that mold where he's like, give me the ball. I want the ball. And I want the guy that wants the ball when the game's on the line. So I'm all for it.
I'd like to see John Brown versus those DB2s. I think we're all looking forward to seeing that. We, Charles, I don't know if you were with us last week, but I suggest going back and watching, even if it's just a shortened YouTube clip. We talked all about Air Raid Allen on our last show last Thursday, and the impact that Stefon Diggs is going to have on the offense. I think John Brown, he caught 4 touchdowns at 20-plus yards from Josh Allen last year, and Stefon Diggs was one of only 2 receivers who caught more touchdowns with 20-plus yards last year. So now we got 2 of them on the same team. It's going to cause some headaches for the defense. Comment from Sean, and this is the second thing that I think really stuck out to me, and that is, we talked about on this show, like, if we want Jake Fromm to be on this team, he has to make the roster, because even if we want to put him on the practice squad in a perfect world, we can't put him on the practice squad because another team will snatch him up, or he'll just voluntarily choose to go to another team's practice squad. With Davis Webb, like Joe was talking about, like Davis Webb, had play sheets in his hand, was running wide receiver routes, was playing DB routes, was commanding and doing all the things, like moving them from workout to workout to workout. That was shocking to me. A guy who came in here, I don't even think he was on the team in training camp last year. He came in after training camp at the, right around the first week of the season, was on the practice squad most of the year. To me, that screams like, future head coach to me, because I'm not sure if maybe I think what it says to us is we should no longer be surprised if Davis Webb beats out Jake Fromm, if Davis Webb beats out Matt Barkley. It's no longer just a surprise. It's no longer a shock to us, a surprise to us. Okay.
Right.
We had some proof that we saw it coming. But another thing that it made me think about was a couple of years ago, I can't remember if it was Philadelphia or Kansas City. I don't know where he was at the time. But Andy Reid got in some hot water when he cut Matt Nagy and then tried to put him on the coaching staff after training camp. And it was,
I remember that.
They cried a foul saying you're adding, an extra practice squad spot, you're adding an extra roster spot, blah, blah, blah. You're keeping a guy in town. So what that says to me is I really look forward to, things like that really interest me. And I know he's a young guy, like 20, 25, 26 years old, but I really look forward to, this is a guy who's played with Eli Manning, Baker Mayfield, Cliff Kingsbury. Like, he's been around. I put out a tweet, all the different coaches and players he's played with. We could be looking at a future offensive coordinator here someday. So be really interesting to keep an eye on Davis Webb heading into the future. We got a comment here, a super chat from Scott. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Scott.
How about you read the super chat for us?
Yeah, so Scott's asking, do you think the Bills win the AFC East? I know they have a tough schedule. Obviously, we've covered that. And do you think Diggs will go over 1,000 yards this year? It's a good question. John Brown went over 1,000 last year. Now we're adding Diggs to the mix. Still got Beasley, respecting Knox. Maybe we'll get a little more running game going on with Moss and Singletary. 1,000 yards is achievable. I don't necessarily want people to think that if Diggs doesn't get 1,000 yards, that it's not a successful year from him, because we got to see what the rest of the offense, how the rest of the offense kind of shakes out statistically. So I do think he has the best chance of all the guys on the team to get 1,000 yards. Absolutely. So, if I'm saying right now, Josh's going to throw for around 3,500 yards, give or take, then yeah, he's probably got a good chance to get 1,000 yards this year, but I don't think it's the end all be all if he doesn't. Yeah,
that's an interesting comment. Sorry, I'm looking up Davis Webb's career stats here because James asked if he's still practice squad eligible. I believe he is. I'm going to double check. But a couple of things from Scott there. Number one, do you think the Bills are going to win the AFC East? I'm on record saying, like, it's going to be a tough year for the Bills. Like 8-9 wins, I'd be happy with, because I think 8-9 wins could win us the division. It's a disappointment if we don't win the division this year. It's straight up. I don't even care if we make the playoffs. If we don't win the division this year, it's a disappointment. It's an absolute disappointment and a failure of the season if we don't win the division and win a playoff game, in my opinion. Obviously, maybe that's asking a little bit much, but I don't think so. If this team wants to take the next step, especially in Josh Allen's rookie deal, when we have our best chance of winning, I need to see that light at the end of the tunnel, that Josh Allen can do it before that contract escalates into a $100 million, $120 million contract. I want to see an AFC. I want to see a division title and a playoff win. As for Diggs, that's the interesting question, right? Because I made this comment last year when we were talking about, the core four of Zay Jones, Robert Foster, John Brown, and Cole Beasley. Seems like light years ago we were talking about that. And I said the interesting thing is I said that receiving core might play to Josh Allen's advantage, because I don't know if Josh Allen is the type of quarterback who can force feed a stud like Ben Roethlisberger could just feed Antonio Brown religiously. Matt Ryan can feed Julio Jones religiously. Deshaun Watson could feed Hopkins religiously. I don't know if Josh Allen is the type of quarterback who can just force feed a guy. So it's going to be really interesting to see if Josh Allen can add that aspect to his game. I'm encouraged. Like you saw the Houston game, the toe tap by John Brown, the end zone. I don't even want to call it a drop because it was a tough play by Duke Williams, but those are the type of throws that Stefon Diggs comes up with. So maybe those are the type of catches that he makes that other receivers don't, because we see an insane number of drops from the Bills receivers the last couple of years. He makes that others don't. That really makes it easier for him to get to that 1,000-yard threshold than others.
Yeah, and it's been well documented statistically. The Bills receivers had the most drops on catchable balls of any team. last year. So there you go.
And I can't quite pull up the Davis Webb statistics on my phone, but I don't think he's had 3 or more years of accrued seasons, which is like, I think, being active for like 9+ games. So my guess is Davis Webb probably still does practice squad eligibility. I apologize that I can't give you a concrete answer for that, but yeah, he should. As long as he doesn't have 3+ years of like 9+ games being active, he should be fine, which I don't think he does. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to our the final topic on our end. We're going to get to your guys' questions after, but we want you guys to sort of what's the word I'm looking for here? Appease us for a second here, or oblige us, because there's sort of a little passion project that we've been working on that we're really excited about, that we wanted to debut today and do in small chunks over the course of the next couple of weeks. And that is a drought draft. So, I spent some time over the last week pooling together all of the players that were on the Buffalo Bills during the drought era. It was both fun and heartbreaking at the same time to accumulate this list. But this is a sort of a passion project for me, something I know selfishly I've wanted to do. My first memory as a Bills fan was the Flutie rollout against the Jaguars to win the game. My first time I really felt an emotion during a Bills game was the Music City Miracle. Like, that's the first game I remember really having a real visceral reaction, not just the kid who forgets the game's over 5 minutes after it's over. Like, my first real true sort of, heartbreak as a Bills fan was that Music City Miracle, and it still stings me to this day. And, I believe you're a couple years older than me. I grew up with the drought era Bills. I have very few memories of Thurman and Bruce and Jim. Those are stories I hear from my father and other people. Spin 0481 says I would like to see an all-time roster. Maybe, next offseason we get to that as well.
Yeah, that'd be good.
But again, this is a little sort of like a selfish little project we're doing here, because these were the teams and the coaches and the players that I grew up with. My formative years, like my 13 to 21, 25, like it was all the drought era. So pretty much all I've ever known as a young adult and adult Bills fan has been this sort of this drought. And I believe it has been for you as well. So what we're actually going to do is, over the next like 10 shows, we're going to draft a team based on all the players in the drought. And what makes this team different is we're not just picking starters. We're going to pick a 48-man roster. So I believe the rules here, I have them written down. We're going to create a 48-man roster, sort of like you would see in a modern NFL game, since they have moved the game day rosters up to 48. We're going to choose a coaching staff, and we're going to make a couple exceptions. So some names that you might not see in a typical drought draft. Keon Carpenter, Peerless Price, Antoine Winfield. Those were sort of guys who were hanging around during the Music City Miracle, but didn't sort of make the biggest impact of the world. They're going to be in our draft because guess what? We get to make the rules. A couple other of people, I'm going to make some McDermott era exceptions. Tyrod Taylor, I'm sorry, but he was gone the second we made the playoffs and then lost. I know Tyrod Taylor more for the drought than I do for breaking the drought. Preston Brown is another name I'm going to throw in there because he played a bunch of years and then left right the year we made the playoffs. And last but not least, this guy played 2 years after the drought, but I'm counting him because this is the guy that made the drought, ending the drought, so special. The emotions that you saw from him in the locker room. I am putting Kyle Williams on the list of eligible players because, why not? We get to make the rules, right? I associate Kyle Williams with the drought. He's part of the drought. He played on this team for so long. He deserves to have his name in here as we call about players. So the players will come later. I think we'll draft about 5-6 guys a week leading up to the season until we have our full roster down. But we're going to have you guys throw us suggestions about who you think we should take first. Davion Price says I'm taking Takeo Spikes first, but coaching staff. Have we decided who's picking first? We're going to pick a head coach, an offensive coordinator, a defensive coordinator, a special teams coach. Feel free to try to change our minds on the side. Who should we pick as a coach? And the thing that's different for us is we could pick any coach we want. Any coach we want. Like we could make Greg Roman our head coach if we wanted to. So any guy that was on the staff, we can make part of our team here.
Yep. So today no, we haven't decided, but today I think we're just doing the main spots, right? Head coach, OC, DC, and special teams. Yeah. So we'll just knock those big ones out today. No, we haven't decided. So maybe we need to do like a little live rock, paper, scissors here to see who who should go first. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or who should be able to decide whether who goes
we should
first.
Vote. All right, how about we give people 30 seconds to decide who gets to go first? Comment with who you think should go first. And after 30 seconds, we'll add it up here because I don't know. What's your philosophy going in? Like maybe give me a clue here of where you're going.
My philosophy is a little bit like I kind of want like strong coordinators, and I kind of want maybe like the head coach to necessarily not have been a guy that maybe has never been a head coach, or maybe has and maybe didn't have a great track record as a head coach, but I think like has the experience and maybe like did a good enough job and put a good enough staff around him. So like I'm going to kind of approach it that way. I'm going to look for strong coordinators.
Oh, we are tied 1-1 right now. Divine went with me and James went with Tilt. Next person decides it.
Next person, or you get to go first because Divine came in first with the comments. So
I'm saying next person decides it, or we go rock paper scissors.
All right, that's fine. We'll do that.
Wait on it. All right, let's go. No, we got Gailey. So all right, let's rock paper scissors. One game, not best of three. Even though I'm a best of three guy, let's just do one game of rock paper scissors here. Hold your hand up. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
I got rock.
All right. You want first pick or second two?
I want the second two.
All right. Dang it. I wanted the second two. All right. My first pick is a little bit different. And my philosophy going in, I'm obviously picking my head coach first. My philosophy going in was I wanted to go outside the box because I don't think the Bills have had a very good head coach between really Wade Phillips and Sean McDermott. Nothing really wowed me all that much. He didn't cheat, Truth. I think I promise you I didn't. A little bit of a lag there, but it's all right. I'm confident that I can create the stats.
This is true. This is truth right here. It was one of the worst. It was totally bad. But like, look, there's a little bit of lag here. We're doing the best we can.
Yeah. All right. So I decided to go a little outside the box, and my first thought was Jim Schwartz. And Mike Pettin and some of these guys who I think probably deserve another shot at being head coaches in the National Football League. Guys who I think, Jim Schwartz did a great job here with the defense. Mike Pettin did a great job with the defense. Jim Schwartz got a raw deal in Detroit. Mike Pettin got a raw deal in Cleveland. But the more I thought of it and the more I looked at the headlines of what's really going on in the world lately, sort of the National Football League world landscape. And one of the big things they've been talking about in the National Football League lately is the Rooney Rule and how African-American head coaching candidates really haven't, had a fair shake of things. So one of the things that I did was I really challenged myself to go back and I looked through the coaching staff at maybe some African-American assistants who don't get their due. And that's when I decided on my head coach for my fictitious Drought team roster. And I'm going with Jerry Gray, who was the defensive coordinator under Greg Williams. I look at Jerry Gray. And I think this is a guy who I think deserves a chance to be a head coach in the National Football League, or at least did at one point. He coached under Greg Williams. He coached under Joe Gibbs. He coached under Pete Carroll, and he coached under Mike Zimmer. So he's coached under some really good, head coaches and coordinators in the National Football League. People forget because of how bad the Buffalo Bills offense was, but the Buffalo Bills were second in the NFL in defense in 03 and 04 with Jerry Gray as their defensive coordinator. He was the DB coach in Seattle when the Legion of Boom was born with Earl Thomas and Cam Chancellor. So I'm going to go with Jerry Gray as my head coach.
I like that pick, and I was actually thinking along the same lines, but I'm glad you didn't take the guy that I wanted to take. So I've got two picks here in a row, and I'm actually going to kind of approach it the same way that you are, based on how you're talking about, what's going on and like sort of different sort of rules they're trying to, maybe implement to kind of, bring more attention to the fact that there needs to be more, attention paid to these really good coaches that maybe haven't gotten the fair shake. So for me, my head coach I'm picking is actually a current head coach in the NFL, and I'm picking Anthony Lynn as my head coach. Obviously a down year last year with the Chargers, but 9-7 his first year, 12-4 his second year, has a playoff win on the resume. I think a lot of people were kind of impressed with Anthony Lynn when he came in as our interim coach after Rex Ryan was gone. So I'm going Anthony Lynn as my head coach. I think that he's proven himself already as a head coach in the NFL, and I think the ceiling's pretty high for him. He's lets his staff do what they need to do, and he kind of manages the team, and he's got a pretty cool head on his shoulders when it comes to in-game management and things like that. So for me, I'm going Anthony Lynn, head coach.
All right. We have another super chat from Scott. Scott, we appreciate the super chat. Hang with us for about 3-4 minutes as we finish our draft, and then we're going to get right to your question, Scott. We promise. All right. All right. So you get the second pick now.
Yep.
So you've already gone Anthony Lynn. Are you going to go defense here, or are you going to
I'm going to
screw me over because there's very few people who can run an offense.
Well, I'm going to balance it out, right? Because now that I've got Anthony Lynn as my head coach, I feel pretty good about whether or not he ends up calling the plays or whatever. I feel okay on the offensive side of the ball, whatever it may shake out. So on the defensive side of the ball, I'm actually going to go with a guy who was our defensive coordinator and has also been a head coach in the NFL, and that's Jim Schwartz. Very good coach in his own right. Like you said, maybe got a raw deal in Detroit. He's a little bit of a, I wouldn't say polarizing figure, but he's had his moments where he's done some questionable things. We all remember him getting carried off the field, the whole Jim Harbaugh incident. Or John Harbaugh, I guess it was, it was Jim Harbaugh, excuse me. And, but he's always coordinated a really good defense and has always been able to generate good sack numbers. And he runs that 4-3 sort of aggressive style rushing defense that I like. So I'm going to go with, to balance it out, Anthony Lynn, head coach, Jim Schwartz, defensive coordinator.
All right. I'm a little jealous now, actually. That's a pretty good combo there. I'm going to have to create a combo of my own here. And the two choices I'm looking at for offensive coordinator, I'm down to Greg Roman and Chan Gailey. And as much as I love and respect Greg Roman as an offensive coordinator, I think that with the quarterbacks that I'm going to have to choose from when we go throughout this draft, I think Chan Gailey's going to have a better shot at creating an offense around one of these quarterbacks that I'm going to be stuck drafting. So I'm going to add Chan Gailey as my offensive coordinator to go along with Jerry Gray.
Current offensive coordinator in the NFL somehow. Yeah. Chan Gailey. All right, cool. So I guess this rounds it out, right?
You still need to pick an OC, and I still need to pick a DC. And special teams coordinators, but
all right. So I guess it's back to me now. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to pick my offensive coordinator, and I'm going to pick a guy that I've kind of liked his style, and he's been a head coach, and he's the one guy outside of when we broke the drought that actually led this team as a head coach to a winning record. Mm-hmm. He's not like the sexiest pick here, but he's got good experience. It's not Doug Marrone. It is actually Mike Mularkey. I'm going with Mike Mularkey as my offensive coordinator, his head coaching experience, offensive coordinator experience, been a tight ends coach. He's been, he won a playoff game with the Titans as a head coach when no one thought he would. Remember that Chiefs game. So I'm going Mularkey. I think he gets kind of a bad rap because he had those couple bad years in Jacksonville, but he's actually a pretty good coach. He wouldn't have been around the league this long as he's been, if he's not a good coach. So I'm going Mularkey with my offensive coordinator pick.
And a funny story for Pierre there. I actually forgot to put Doug Marrone on the list.
Well, nobody was picking him. It's okay.
If you look at the list I made of coaches, I just straight up forgot to put Doug Marrone. I guess I subconsciously forgot about him. For my defensive coordinator, I'm going to go with George Edwards. He was the defensive coordinator in Chan Gailey. He didn't have much success with the Buffalo Bills running a 34, but he actually went and, he was in Minnesota with Jerry Gray, so there's a connection there. He coordinated that defense along with Mike Zimmer. I really like that 43 defense they run there in Minnesota. So I'm going to go with George Edwards as my defensive coordinator to go along with Jerry Gray and Chan Gailey. And can you let me take my special teams coordinator first, since you?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, go ahead.
The only two real logical choices are in my opinion, are Danny Smith or Bruce DeHaven. But I just have a soft spot for Bruce DeHaven. I love those trick plays, those old Ryan Denny trick plays, and all those things they used to run back in the day. So I'm going to round out my staff with Bobby April.
Wait. Okay, so you just said two names, and then you said Bobby April. So, okay, I got you.
I went with Bobby April, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm going to take Danny Smith here. DeHaven probably was the logical choice, but he just kind of had such a fall from grace with the Bills that I'm just going to take kind of like the generic pick here and go with Danny Smith. Probably a detriment to the overall unit, but you know what? It's fine. It's special teams. We'll figure out a way, and we'll get through it. So Danny Smith will be my guy.
He had some success after he left the Bills. So I think he's still the coordinator in Pittsburgh. Yeah. All right. So your staff is Anthony Lynn, Jim Schwartz,
Mike Mularkey,
and Danny Smith. Mine is Jerry Gray, Chan Gailey, George Edwards, and Bobby April. Should be interesting now that we have to sort of draft our teams based on our coaching staff, which brings us to Scott's question now. With all that's going on with Oliver, NFL league suspension, do you think our defense will be the same without him? We've made this comment a few times, I think now, but to be quite honest, I'd say so. I think we'll be just fine because, number one, we brought in Quentin Jefferson, who is top 5 analytically, along with Ed Oliver, in rushing the quarterback from the interior. Not necessarily the box score stat sheet like Jordan Phillips, but from an analytical standpoint, from a pressure standpoint, top 5 along with Ed Oliver. So you have that going for you with Quentin Jefferson. And I think a guy who fell right into the Buffalo Bills' lap, who can also move inside and kick inside and play that 3-technique role and provide a pass rush from the interior in AJ Epinesa. So is Ed Oliver a better player than both those guys? Hell yes. Will he be missed if he misses some games? Hell yes. Is he a game-breaking talent who could put this defense over the top? Hell yes. But I don't think it's going to hurt this defense's stability or make this defense fall off a cliff with him gone.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about this, like, depending on the number of games that he gets suspended, right? Let's say he misses 2 games, those first 2 crucial division games, obviously, Jets and Dolphins, we need to win those games. But it's almost like you feel like maybe you could get away with not having him those first 2 games. So in a way, you're kind of like, it's like a double-edged sword. Do you want him because you want to win those games? Absolutely. You're going to be going against some pretty good running backs and Le'Veon Bell and Breida and Jordan Howard. But at the same time, we have the depth across the line that you probably can mask whatever he's going to bring to the table those first couple games where you can get away with it. So I think the interesting thing is a point that you made in one of the earlier shows is like, what if the suspension comes like in the middle of the season? Then that's going to be, I think, where it gets a little interesting if he misses maybe some games against tougher opponents.
All right. We got a comment here and we're going to open it up to you guys now. So whatever you guys want to talk about, how about, I'm feeling it, Dave. You want to stay a little late tonight? Maybe stay like an extra 10, 15 minutes?
Yeah, we're good. I mean, we got we're already getting close to 10, so let's push it to 10, 15.
You guys put up with us for our drought draft, so we'll stay on a little extra long today, and we'll answer some questions here. Divine Demigod 777. Did you guys see Antonio Brown was at practice with Josh and Stefon and all of them? I sort of saw a couple of things, but from what I've been told, and I could be wrong, feel free to correct me, anyone, Dave, yourself included. It was Antonio and Stefon. I don't think Josh and Antonio were ever on the same practice field from my understanding of the situation, but I could be wrong. I don't know. Have you heard anything or seen anything different?
No, that's what I heard. And I thought that it was, I thought the practice that he was at was the one with Dwayne Haskins. I didn't think it was Josh, but Diggs might've been at that one. So that's what I knew. I don't think he was ever there on the field with Josh together.
And I don't understand why NFL players continue to associate themselves with this guy. Like if I was tight with Antonio Brown or close to Antonio Brown, like I would just cut this dude loose at this point. Like I don't know. He just he is a character. He's now starting to do things criminally that I'm not really down with, and I'm not gonna lie to you, he just freaks me out. Between that haircut and everything, he just freaks me out. So.
It just seems like he's just unstable, right? And that's the thing I think that worries you about him. Is like, what's he going to do next? And it's unfortunate.
It could be it could be a situation where these people are truly friends with him and tight with him, and they want to be near him to get a read on him because they are concerned about things like his mental health and that nature. But a lot of enabling, I feel like, goes on with Antonio Brown. There's not a lot of people who are willing to put their foot down and sort of tell him how it is. And Antonio Brown seems to be living in his own reality. But any other questions from the comments section? Hit us up with whatever you guys got. We're willing to sit here and talk about whatever topics you guys want to hit at tonight. Buffalo Bills off season. This is sort of the slow season, so we're counting on you guys here. What does Spin have to say?
So Spins, I mean, it's kind of along the same lines as the Ed Oliver situation. He says our D-line can sustain an injury or suspension for a couple of games without a drop-off as long as it's not multiple players. So I think this question kind of gets more along the lines of like injuries to guys. And if we have multiple people out, what does that then turn our line into? That's a little bit of a different question, right? Because if you start seeing like key guys, like maybe, Ed Oliver's suspended, or then maybe Jerry Hughes gets dinged up or something, and like all of a sudden then AJ Epenesa is on the field maybe from day one, like that could maybe have an impact early on. But I still think the depth that we have is going to afford us. Look, we were one of the healthiest teams in the league last year. There's no doubt about that. Injuries are going to happen. Going back to the mean, like the math would say that we probably will have more injuries this year than we did last year, just based on statistical averages. But you hate to think that way. But on the defensive line, I really feel like as far as depth, this might be the deepest group we have on the roster, deepest position group. So I think we can afford it.
Adam, I think this is a little chance to do a little cross promotion here. Our editor-in-chief, Adam Danini at the Buffalo Fanatics, who's winning at the Battle of the Eras. Me and you are actually going to be recording with these guys tomorrow night for a podcast that is dropping Wednesday morning on the Buffalo Fanatics Podcasting Network, where we will be sort of the Mark Cuban and I don't know, what are the other Shark Tank people. We'll be judging their Battle of the Era series. So make sure you check that out Wednesday morning on the Buffalo Fanatics Podcasting Network. There was a question a little bit further up about Stefon Diggs that I liked. Where was it? Yeah, there we go. From Divine Demigod, is Stefon an Odell Beckham Jr. diva or another type of diva? I will say this about Odell Beckham Jr. I think he's different type of diva to an extent where I think they both have the same football mindset. Like Odell Beckham is very much a guy who thinks he's the best football player on the field because he is a football player on the field, and he backs up his talk with his work ethic and his play. And there are very few players in the National Football League who grind harder than Odell Beckham. So I think Stefon Diggs is different in that, is similar in that respect. But what I think differentiates them is I don't think Stefon Diggs on National Championship weekend is going to go, walking down Bourbon Street throwing, stacks of money at college athletes. I don't think we have things like that to worry about with Stefon Diggs. So
no.
I respect Beckham from a grinding standpoint and things like that, but I don't think we have to worry about some of that silly stuff that you have to worry about with a guy like Odell.
Yeah, I mean, all of Diggs is, quote, antics, right? And they've been minimal, to be honest with you, compared to what you see. They've all been within the confines of the sideline in the field. You never hear anything about him off the field. And in fact, everything you see about him off the field has been like 100% work ethic, 100% grinding, practicing, making sure he's better. And so, look, Diggs wasn't a high draft pick, right? So he probably still has a little bit of that chip on his shoulder too, coming from Maryland. I mean, it wasn't like it's not like a football powerhouse, right? So I like that about him. So good question there. Now we got a question from Dan Mark, which is a really interesting one. I like this question a lot. Which second-year player will have the biggest jump? So we think back to our rookies from last year. Obviously, we got Oliver, we got Singletary, we got Knox. Those are the ones that come to mind, immediately. So do you have a guy in mind that you are looking to see having the biggest jump this year?
Well, I guess the difference between who I think will make the jump and who I want to make the jump, in all honesty, I really do. I just have this feeling it's going to be Devin Singletary. I mean, this is the guy who I honestly felt was almost held back a little bit by the coaching staff last year. And I know that we've added Zach Moss. I know that we've added Stefon Diggs, but I have a feeling that you're going to see a lot more of the Buffalo Bills. Last year, I'm trying to find the right words here. Last year, I felt like we did a pretty good job. Devin Singletary was out there when we were sort of trying to spread the ball to run. We were trying to spread the field to run the ball. And when we went into that 12 personnel, we brought in the tight ends. It was sort of like Frank Gore time. And it's going to be really interesting to me to see if there's a change in the mindset of Brian Daboll and whether he uses Zach Moss exactly like he used, Frank Gore, and Zach Moss comes in when the big boys come in, and Devin Singletary comes out when it's spread out, or if he sort of uses Moss and Singletary interchangeably and just sort of rolls with that sort of spread to run mentality where you have your wide receivers and you're running the football. And because when you spread to run, it really helps your running back get to the second level because there's not as many bodies at the line of scrimmage. And we saw what Devin Singletary can do at the second level, not so much as a guy who's going to have the breakaway speed and run at 89 yards for a touchdown, but as a guy who can make safeties and linebackers look silly and, get those chunk plays of 8 to 12 yards or 8 to 20 yards. So it's going to be really exciting. And I think that my hot take here is I think Devin Singletary could probably average more than 6 yards per carry in 2020. I think he could have a higher yards per carry than 6 yards.
I mean, statistically, it's probably the easiest for the running back to make the biggest jump, especially now that he doesn't have the elder statesman kind of in that sort of trust role behind him, right? Where Frank Gore's coming on for, where they coaching staff needs to trust him. He's got another rookie now behind him. So Singletary is going to be the guy they trust this year. So it makes sense. I want it to be Knox, honestly, statistically, but I just worry that now with Diggs in the mix that, what do we define as a jump, right? Is it a jump in statistics? Is it a jump in efficiency in his playing time? Like, I don't know what that looks like. And then there's obviously Ed Oliver. Like, is he going to kind of become that interior rush playmaker, the Aaron Donald light that we all kind of hope he can become? If he's suspended for a few games, then maybe, maybe that hurts him a little bit. So I think in my heart, I want it to be Knox and I wanted to see him kind of break out. So that's the guy I'm kind of rooting for, I guess, like outside of Singletary to have the biggest jump.
Yeah, we got Daniel here. He says, just joined. Daniel, welcome to the Buffalo Fanatics. We really appreciate it, man. We look forward to, conversing with you over the coming weeks and months heading into the regular season. Dan
Here's
Mark
a good one.
continues. What about Cody Ford? What are your thoughts on Cody Ford entering into year two?
Look, I mean, we talked about the offensive line a little bit a couple shows ago, and we said, like, well, what do we want the offensive line to be, and what do we think it's going to be? And I said, look, I want Ford to play right tackle because that's what the Bills are saying they want him to do. So in my mind, I'm like, if they're set on him playing right tackle, then he needs to make that jump. And if he can make that jump, that's going to be huge for the Bills, right? It's just like I still have my reservations of whether or not he can do it. If he does, that could be the most like under the radar success story for the Bills in 2020, right? People are going to talk about Singletary. They're going to talk about Diggs. But if Ford can make that jump and become like a pretty reliable right tackle, that's going to be huge for the Bills. So like, yeah, for sure rooting for that to happen. I just don't know. I just don't know if it's going to happen. That's just my fear.
Vermin X says, does Duke count? Yeah. I mean, Duke counts. It would be his second year as a Buffalo Bill. If I was a betting man, like, Casey Reed over here on the Buff City podcast, our new Buffalo Fanatics gambling podcast, I wouldn't put money on Duke. Not because I don't like Duke, not because I think Duke is a bad football player, but because if you're making that bet right now, if you're making that projection right now, you want to pretty much guarantee that the guy's going to be on the football team. And I just can't sit here and tell you with any absolute certainty that Duke Williams is going to be on the football field for the Buffalo Bills in 2020. So, Duke counts. It'd be a great story, but and there's a guy named Isaiah Hodgins who's going to have something to say about that.
Yeah, and I worry about that too. Another situation like a Daryl Johnson almost, where it's like it's a more of an uphill battle for him this year to make the team. So it's going to be tough. I agree. Good question here from Divine Demigod 777. What do you guys think Josh Allen's completion percentage will be? We talked about this a lot last year as far as like judging or measuring Josh's success. Do you see him maybe getting over that 60% mark this year? Where do you think that he's going to end up this year?
I don't. Like, I'd see him somewhere probably around 58%. I don't think Josh Allen is ever going to be a guy who has a completion percentage any higher than 60, 62. And I really don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, we've had this conversation before. I think we had it on our first vidcast here on the Buffalo Fanatics Network when we were talking about Darnold. He does it. What sets Josh Allen apart is he just does it in different ways, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, that's the reason why I think a lot of people in the national media are so scared of Josh Allen, because it's not traditional. He's not going to be Drew Brees. He's not going to be Tom Brady. It's just That's not going to be the way Josh Allen wins football games. There are going to be some games when he has a 50% completion percentage. But if he goes 20 for 40, but he's averaging, 15, 16 yards per throw down the field, like, what that's an excessive number. But, he's making a lot of big chunk plays down the field. He's making plays with his legs. He's doing those other things. He just does it in other ways. So my guess is, if I was a betting man, I'd say somewhere between 58 and 60%. But I also don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, I mean, look, 52% his rookie year, jumped up to 58.8 to last year. So I think 60% is achievable. But I also thought Josh Allen was pretty damn efficient on those long intermediate throws that we talked about last year. He made a lot of good throws last year. And yes, he did miss on deep balls. So that's been well documented. And again, we've talked about how he's not the dump off type of guy to kind of pad those completion percentage numbers. It's, those aren't yardage passes for you. Those are completion percentage passes. And he just doesn't do that often. So even if he does hit a few more of those deep kind of rainbow-y type long balls, I don't know that's going to help his completion percentage all that much, like not to the tune of, 3-4% probably over the course of a season. Because you're only going to hit a couple of those in the season anyway. So I think if he settles in just right around where he was last year, that 58 to 60%, I think that's probably okay.
Yeah. A couple other comments here. We have Adam saying he disagrees. Guy made a 6%, jump in completion percentage last year. I could see that jump continuing. I don't get why everyone makes the completion percentage an end all be all. He doesn't need 70% completion percentage to win games. I completely agree with you there, Spin. Dan Mark says, I'd say low 60s, less drops, more experience in receivers, and a smarter Allen. I can go with that. Let's see, we got a comment here. I think it's going to come down to Josh. I feel like, my God, this team is ready, and Josh is the key. I mean, for sure. I mean, in today's NFL, you go as the quarterback goes. I really like this question here from James.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Who will be the biggest surprise cut on offense? That is a tricky one. I'm going to let you go first so I can think about it.
Look, I don't know if it's going to be a surprise, but we've already talked about Duke Williams. I don't think that's going to be a surprise, honestly. I think the biggest surprise cut might be Isaiah McKenzie, honestly. He's been pretty decent for the team a lot, when they picked him up from Denver 2 years ago, and last year they showed that they can use him in different ways. But it's going to be tough unless the Bills don't keep both rookies on the active roster. I just don't know how McKenzie's going to make the team, honestly, if they only keep 6 receivers. So I think McKenzie could be a surprise cut. This
one might not be deemed a surprise because it's certainly not a sexy position, but I'm going to go a little bit outside the box here and say Spencer Long. I think everyone realistically looks at him as like, oh, he could play center, he could play guard. He's a backup all over. Like he's a lock. He's a lock. But the Bills made a kind of an under the radar signing in a guy named Evan Bain, who, in my opinion, is just a younger version of Spencer Long. Evan Bain has played in the National Football League. He's got quite a number of starts under his belt. Hasn't been as successful as Spencer Long, but he's got that guard center flex. He can be your backup left guard. He can be your backup center. People forget that John Feliciano is really truly our backup center. If Mitch Morse goes down, it's going to be John Feliciano at center, and now you have Darrell Williams to fill that right guard spot. So maybe you don't need Spencer Long, and maybe a guy like Evan Bain who could play left guard can play center, or maybe even one of the youngsters like a Brandon Walton or a Trey Adams can fill into that spot there.
Your guy, Adam Nannini here, editor-in-chief of Fanatics.
My guy, our guy.
Yeah, he's our guy. He's our guy. What will Voshon Joseph do this year? A lot of people have kind of made comments about Voshon Joseph and kind of what they think that he's going to do. Look, I would love. I mean, it's probably not going to happen because of the money they're paying AJ Klein, but I'd love to see Voshon Joseph maybe take over that strong side linebacker role from AJ Klein as we kind of progress down the stretch of the season. Or to your comment that you made maybe last week is maybe you do roll with 2 weak side type linebackers on the field at the same time and get Milano and Joseph on there with Edmonds. But to me, I would rather kind of like to see Joseph develop into that strong side backer role where he feels a little bit of what Lorenzo Alexander was doing, because I think he can provide a little rush to his game. And I just don't really I'm not impressed with AJ Klein at this stage. So I'm thinking that's kind of what I would like to see from him.
Yeah, it's really weird with Voshon Joseph, and this is going to be Voshon Joseph is going to be one of the players where I'm going to read so much into his position on the depth chart, because if they don't move him around a lot, if he's strictly Matt Milano's backup on the weak side, you could look at it and be like, well, maybe they're hedging their bets with, Matt Milano, and they really want to make sure they have a guy there who's trained at that position to take over for Matt Milano if he walks in the contract year. Another way you could look at it and read into it is like, man, Voshon Joseph it's not clicking. He doesn't have the smarts to play multiple positions. He's overwhelmed. He's just, remember, who was it? Shaq Lawson. Like they moved Shaq Lawson to right end to try to make him feel more comfortable so he can get more sacks. Shaq Lawson's obviously a pretty good player. That might not be the best analogy in the world, but if they keep Voshon at just one position, is it because they're hedging their bets, or is it because he can only handle one position? So we'll never know the answer because we're never in the room. But it'll be something that I don't want to say lose sleep over, but something I'll definitely overthink. Maybe I'll start my own a new podcast, the Overthinking Podcast.
Here's a good question. I think this is going to come up a lot over the course of the next couple months around this receiving group. Will either rookie receiver make it through waivers if one of them tries to get placed on the practice squad? I don't think so. I think Gabe Davis definitely not, right? I think Gabe Davis is almost a lock to make the team. Hodgins may be a guy that maybe sneaks by, but by most accounts, probably a top 25-ish receiver in the draft class, albeit a deep class. So you wonder, like, where would he have been in kind of a normal year? So 6th-round guy, I'm thinking he's probably not going to make it through waivers either. I think he's probably going to get picked up by somebody. I also think it's kind of like your Jake Fromm situation where it's like if Isaiah Hodgins, he's probably more likely to return to our practice squad. But if he has a chance to go to maybe another practice squad where he's got a better chance to kind of make his way up the roster, less likely, I agree. But I don't think either one of them are going to get cut and make it to the practice squad.
I mean, in terms of Hodgins, you got to think about it like this. Me and you have both speculated that it's Hodgins versus Duke Williams for that big slot role, that last wide receiver role. But you also got to take into account the new NFL rosters and how it's, you can bring the roster up to 55 players with practice squad guys. So what if it is the Buffalo Bills decide to cut Duke Williams and Isaiah Hodgins? You know what I'm saying? Then I think Isaiah might be more likely to come back to our practice squad if he makes it through waivers, because he knows like the Bills need that big slot one week. I'm the guy they're calling.
I'm the guy. Yep.
But on the other hand, if we are on the money here and it is Duke Williams versus Isaiah Hodgins and they choose Duke Williams over Isaiah Hodgins, why would Isaiah Hodgins come back to a practice squad when another guy who fills the same exact role, and there's probably only ever going to be one of them, why would he come back to a practice squad to play second fiddle to Duke Williams when he can go somewhere else and try to fill the big slot void somewhere else, even if it is just on the practice squad? So to me, Gabe Davis is 100% a roster lock. And to me, Isaiah Hodgins, how many times have I done that in the last 2 weeks? But
6, I think.
I think Isaiah Hodgins would probably, in my opinion, has a 70-30 advantage over Duke Williams.
I think that's fair.
Team. Vermin X says, how is Phillips going to fit back in, and what happens to players at that position? And to me, the most telling story is, I think, first of all, he's going to be strictly a one technique now. He's going to be sort of that space eater, type of player. The guy who plays opposite of Ed Oliver, the guy who plays on the early downs, like first and second down. I don't think you're going to see him in a lot of late down situations. But I think the most interesting things with Harrison Phillips is as much as I love Harrison Phillips, is that Brandon Beane had some interesting comments about him and his rehab. He's like, coming back from his rehab, he's like, I can't remember the exact words because it was so long ago, but Brandon Beane didn't seem very optimistic. I'm not going to say he said bad things, but he didn't seem the most optimistic man in the world when talking about Harrison Phillips heading into the 2020 season, not because of his play, but because of his health.
Because of his health, and he's probably hedging his bets a little bit, right? Knowing that he hasn't had a chance to see him in person, hasn't had a chance to kind of see how he's moving around. We did bring in Vernon Butler. We've got Starr there still. So maybe it's a way to kind of protect Harrison Phillips as well, right? Protect him from himself, because we've heard quotes from Harrison Phillips talking about how he's like super anxious to get back on the field, super anxious to run out of that tunnel, right? And like, so maybe it's a way for Brandon Beane to protect Harrison from himself a little bit, to say, look, man, you're going to be okay. We're going to get you back when you're ready. We want you to be ready. We want you to be 100%. So, I think maybe in a way he's kind of doing that to kind of just hedge his bets a little bit against, him coming back too early.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Some final commentary here. Pierre says, Bill Sands been hurt for so many years. We tend to shelter our excitement to protect our emotions.
That's true. That's absolutely true.
To think Josh takes the legitimate leap if you break it down, it's very doable. Yeah, I agree with you. I think a big part of it is seeing what Mitch Trubisky did this past season and not wanting to pump my chest and scream Josh Allen from the mountaintops here in Arizona, and then have him go out and pull a Mitch Trubisky. I think that's something that is also, unfortunately, I don't want to curse anything, knock on wood, but is also very doable. So
it's on you if that happens.
Yeah, I don't need to be the pessimist in the group, but I'm with you, Pierre. I'm going to be excited. I'm not going to sit here and think about worst case scenario yet. I'll actually just wait for if it does happen, then we'll have that conversation. How does that sound?
Yeah, I mean, ceiling wise, he can do it, right? He's got all he can make every throw. He has the rushing ability. We've got the weapons. So like it's set up for him to make a case and potentially be on that short list this year with the likes of Lamar and Patrick. So we'll see. I mean, he's got a chance, right? Like, it's not one of those where we're just kind of saying it just to say it. Like, there is a legitimate chance. I mean, it is probably not likely, but there is a chance that it could happen. You just never know.
All right. Well, that should just about do it. Name one Bears wide receiver.
Allen Robinson, he's pretty good.
Tyler Gabriel, Anthony Miller, Trey Burton.
No, Trey Burton's gone.
But
Taylor Gabriel's gone
from last year.
Oh yeah, well, Trey Burton stunk anyway. But Allen Robinson is a good receiver, probably one of the more underrated players in the NFL. But that's besides the point, I guess.
Adam said, "I'm waiting for a top tier rant." I'll tell you what, I got nothing right now. I think the world is right now. The world is too full of people ranting and not full enough of people maybe just talking quietly. So I'm gonna keep it low. I'm gonna keep it low key for a while. Maybe I'm gonna save up the rants for the season.
Save your rants for the season, and yeah, there's a lot of rants going on. So let's keep it lighthearted as much as we can for today, except for roasting Pierre on the Bears receivers.
Yeah. Before we do head out, one last thing: if you are looking for some Bills swag, some sweet Bills gear, head over to bffanshop.com. They got it's inexcusable that I haven't updated the
Come on, man. Where's the Eminem? Where's the Eminem shirt?
The Eminem, the Monster Motor shirts have arrived. You still got your Mr. Process. You got your digs. So head over to the BF Fan Shop, and guess what? The already affordable Buffalo Fanatics gear. I think the highest price thing on there is like $25.
Yeah,
10% off if you use the promo code Bills Guys, BILLSGUIS. So head on over to the BF Fan Shop. If you're looking for some gear to rock around the neighborhood, or to wear during the Bills games this season, get on board now. Head over to bffanshop.com. The promo code is Bills Guys. You get yourself 10% off.
Love it. And you can use it as many times as you want. Like, if you get a shirt and it's like, oh, it fits me pretty well, get another one, use it again. You can use it as many times as you want. All right.
Divine says, Night Bros, awesome stream, guys. We appreciate it. We appreciate all of you guys. Every single one of you guys. It seems like we're getting some regulars now. So I really do appreciate that. Spin 0481 says, is that Mr. Clean? That's actually Sean McDermott, but it's made to look like Mr. Clean.
Yeah,
so
that's why it is Mr. Process. Yeah. Process. Steven's coming.
We got our regulars now. We got our super chatters now. So we appreciate all you guys. We're going to keep growing this community, but no matter how big we get, we're always going to appreciate the people who are here from us from the beginning. So for you guys, we really do appreciate it. it's crazy to think that this many people are tuning in to watch us talk about Buffalo Bills football, and we really love having this conversation.
Yeah,
so
it's great. Really appreciate everyone. Thanks so much.
right,
Can't say it enough.
Until next time, Dave, go Bills.
Go Bills.